All right, I'm going to go ahead and begin with the roll call. Christina Barsky.
Present.
Cameo Flood.
Here.
Denver Henderson.
Here.
Catherine Nygaard. Amber Schaefer. Susan Mace.
Here.
Travis Hoffman.
Here.
Clara Bentler.
Here.
Todd Mowbray informed me that he would not be in attendance. Marilyn Ryan.
Here.
Rebecca Dawson.
Here.
Kathy Whitman.
Here.
And Josh Slotnick does not appear to have joined us yet. Looks like I've got myself and Bradley as well, and we have a member of the public in. Are there any other members of the public who I have not recorded attendance for?
Perfect. I'm messaging Josh. Also wanted to note that the only person who said they would not be here today has the alternate present. And so that's fantastic. I love seeing both the alternate and the original member, and I love seeing some great participation from everybody. I also know that we're not in the middle of summer, and so everybody's schedules get a little bit easier to coordinate. So thank you for that. And at this point in time, I can pass it over to Christina. Sorry.
No problem. Thanks.
Commissioner Slotnick at the same time.
Thanks, Bradley. Nice to see everybody. With this, I think we'll move to, I'll ask if there's a motion to approve the agenda before we get going. I think Denver's moving. I think that's correct.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would actually move that we add an agenda item to the end of new business to discuss project ideas for the EAC.
So Denver has added a motion to add a new agenda item for new business to discuss project ideas for the EAC, and that's on the floor for consideration.
Christina, would you like me to speak to that, or are we waiting for a second?
A second. I'll second it.
Thank you. And sure, Denver, why don't you give us just a little bit of detail of what you're hoping to cover?
Sure. So Bradley, in his administrator update, gave us several good ideas that we could put our energies toward. In my experience, when this committee has a specific project, we come together really well. We put aside partisan differences and we focus on serving the community. When we don't have that kind of focus, we tend to devolve into bickering and partisan arguments that really aren't germane most of the time to the work that is in front of us. So I would suggest that we take a little bit of time to discuss and try and gain some consensus about what we want to do over the next year.
Great, thanks, Denver. It sounds like this really ties in nicely with the EA update. So it's sort of like new business, but also existing business in some ways. So on the floor right now is a motion to add a new agenda item under new business to discuss project ideas from the EAC. We can take a vote on that. I had a motion to, hear what Denver had to say. Does somebody want to second Denver's proposal?
Second.
Sure, I'll second that.
Great, thank you. All in favor of adding a new bullet point to discuss project ideas for the EAC, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All those opposed, please say aye or raise your hand. Any abstentions, please say aye or raise your hand. All right. Thank you, Denver, and thank you, everyone. We've got a new business item added, and with that amendment to our agenda, I will ask again if there is a motion to approve the agenda to move forward.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second it.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. All right, abstentions. I don't know if that dog was an abstention or not, but I will count it. All right, thanks everybody. So moving forward to our next item on the agenda, we have approval of the recorded minutes from our July 12th meeting. Bradley, were you going to say something or was I?
So I wanted to just join in here really quickly. We had a member of the public reach out to us, and we're going to do just a brief update to the way that we are recording our meeting minutes. We want to, and this is what I'm doing, is taking timestamps as to when items are happening. We wanted to make sure that the recorded meeting minutes also included a timestamp to meet Montana Code annotated. Open meeting laws cover any fiscal decision made. This is an advisory board, so there's no need to worry about being charged with not following open meeting laws because you won't make any fiscal decisions. However, we do everything we can to help make sure that we are following that process. So you'll see from us a little bit more defined outreach for agenda items and a cutoff for agenda items. And then you'll also see the meeting minutes, which will be essentially the same information produced and provided, but there'll be a little bit of a timestamp on the previous agenda that says this is where you can find this discussion. Questions about that from anybody? Sorry, it's hard to keep me from talking.
No questions.
And also thanks to Carol Bellin, who's from the public and will be for bringing that up. It's joining us today, and she brought that up, and I said, absolutely, let me dig into that. Nathan pulled it up, and we're going to make sure we're doing everything we can to help have better access for these meetings.
Great, thank you, Bradley. So we have on the agenda the approval of the recorded minutes, understanding that moving forward, we'll have some timestamps and a little bit more formality when it comes to asking EAC members for agenda items in advance of the meeting. Is there a motion to approve our recorded minutes from 7/12?
So move.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second that. Second.
Thank you. How about I go all in favor, say aye or raise your physical hand. Aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? All right, excellent. So the next item on our agenda is public comment for items not included on the agenda. So at this time, I will open the floor for public comment for items not included on the agenda from members of the public joining us. Okay, hearing none. I'm a teacher. I'm very good at waiting if I need to in the silence. But I don't hear any comments, so we'll move on to old business. We don't have anything under old business at this moment in time. Is there anything that, Bradley, you have that you want to add here?
No, not from me.
All right, we're cruising. We'll move on to the election administrator update, which Bradley provided a link to, a recording for us to view. I think that this is the second time we've had a recording to watch. I think the first was in July, and this was in an effort to try and ensure we have effective meetings, that we're meeting and getting through business as necessary. And so, Bradley, is there anything you want to highlight, or are there questions from the committee about the EA update that we were provided a YouTube link to?
I have a question. Are those updates also available to the public?
Yes, all of our video from this, including the election administrator updates, available through the YouTube links. They're included in the agenda, as well as there's a link directly to all of the recorded videos on the webpage. So they are public in these meetings as we go through. As a county entity, anything that we state in these will be a public record.
Okay, yeah, I did appreciate also, I think Denver said in an email that having those ahead of time, but that was helpful.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so, guys.
Clara.
I had a question about the satellite hours and where that's going to be in the administrative update. I wasn't sure if it was in the UC or the law school and what the dates were. If you could just clarify that.
Yes, so on the bottom of the agenda, we list the location and times of each of the different events. We have quite a few, but the university one will be on Friday, November 28th at the law school. And so the university.
October 28th.
Thank you. That is the second time I've tried to have this event happen after the election. That is in coordination with Vote Early Day. We're hosting it in the law school. The university center is not available. However, last Friday, I received the dates for the future 2 Vote Early Days to book the UC ahead of time, so that we don't run into an issue where it is booked by something not elections related. And then so also we're going to do the 24th at Frenchtown from 10 to 2. We'll do the 2nd at Sealy Lake Tax Extension Office. And then we have 3 events for the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribes. Will be the 4th from 12:30 to 7, the 7th from 8 to 12, and then Election Day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that is the most satellite events we've ever had. And this is fantastic. This is us meeting rural voters, meeting voters who need additional services, who may not be able to access our office, and helping serve tribal lands and sovereign nations with the best service we can. So we normally run 3. We've doubled it for this cycle. This is important to us to help make sure that everybody has the opportunity to vote in the election and to register, cast a ballot in the way they feel most comfortable. Also, I'll just steal a little bit from Denver's. Oh, Clara, so we'll make sure you get them the 28th, and then the other dates are on the agenda. Denver, you had asked about National Voter Registration Day numbers. We had 1 person attend in person. We were not able to record the number of people who watched the live stream because it was broadcast through MCAT's live stream page. So the thousands of other interested voters must have been watching online. We did record the event, and it is posted not only in the update that you guys got from me, but if you go to the presentation portion of our webpage. We wanted to make sure we were providing accurate information. There was a lot of misinformation floating around the week ahead of that. So this provided us an opportunity to have extended hours. We did have people come and utilize those. We received in 1 voter registration. And then we were also able to record this information and provide it out so that it's easily accessible, because what it was is about the requirements for a voter registration form, what items you need and how it gets utilized, as well as the checks and balances that keep Montana's elections some of the most secure in the nation. Also, I'm just going to swing through all of your questions, Denver, because I'm like, they're all hitting the EA update.
That works.
Statewide data, the database. With the statewide database, this is going to have some big benefits. This is linked to geographical information systems. So it's basically map-based. Instead of being a series of streets input by humans and the houses on those streets, it utilizes the information from our GIS department as well as the state library to place pins on houses and help us with making sure that voter registrations are linked to physical addresses. This will be critical because this tool will allow us, when we work on redoing precinct boundaries, to drag and drop precinct boundaries to confirm as equal as possible, are the voter numbers the same? That is the biggest requirement for us when we're working on the precincts, is that they have the same number of voters as equally as possible. And so combined with the additional information we'll be working on from the survey, from the information we'll be compiling together from voter turnout, as well as costs on elections, we'll be using this to look at our upcoming precincts as well as their corresponding polling places. So some great improvements in that capacity. Anytime you make a change, we expect to run into items that need additional clarification. So there will be issues with the database that need additional resolution. And one of the biggest areas is that we haven't been able to, in Missoula County, run that parallel testing. The scope and size of our elections, the number of external requests we've had, we're not able to run 2 elections at the same time out of mirroring databases. So we've been reliant on other counties to help do that testing. I personally struggle with signing off on somebody else's work. So we'll want to review that. We'll want to look for any discrepancies and follow up with counties that have gone through and done this. But the nice portion is that it will have a historical snapshot of our current database. So the same information from our current database will transfer over, which will allow us time to work on any bugs we find with the new database. And for the precincts, the elections run in 2023 are not run by precinct. So it allows us some time to come up with this slate. I'm jumping ahead to the next question from Denver, which is about the time frame for that. And what we'll do is we are going to get through our slate of records requests, our upcoming election training staff, and then we'll put together a time frame from the end to the beginning so that we can work with others to note that this is when we expect to have our final plan together. This is when we can expect to have our first plan together for comments, our second plan together for comments, and build the time frame from the end to the beginning. We want to treat this similarly to the public redistricting process for polling places. Claire, can you hear us okay? Now through your phone.
I had to dial in, but we got it.
Great. So kind of as we go through this, we're going to work from the end date back. I've never done this process. This predates my tenure with the county. I do believe that it will be a June, July, a final completion and building from the information forward. I do want to present some potential maps. I want to take some comment. It's always hard to be the voter where your polling place is drawn and you have to travel 20 miles to get to that. So we want to be mindful of that. But also we do have to divide these precincts equally by population, which makes it kind of hard. And then the last one about contingency planning for election day. We've been working closely with requests from School District 1. Oh, let me back it up. Thanks, Christina, for raising your hand. You know me, I love to talk elections.
Sorry, Bradley. I just wanted to, in thinking to the new agenda item about future EAC projects, I just wanted to ask, this might be a bit of the weeds, but I know when we switched databases in Arizona, non-traditional addresses became a problem using a GIS-based system. For instance, I live on West Beckwith Street West. Did you know that place exists? Doesn't have a street sign. Like, the house has been here for 5 years. You know, I don't know if I'm a non-traditional address or not, but just an example. Are those issues that we're thinking about in the implementation of the new database? Is there anything that you want us to be thinking of in terms of future project ideas that could be related to helping ensure a smooth transition for the department, and anything else you have sort of about that would be great.
Yeah, so I guess I need to give a little background on how this process has gone forward. This originally started in 2018 under Secretary of State Stapleton. We have gone through multiple iterations of working on this database, from what was designated to be a transfer This same database is utilized in Washington, and we were going to transfer the database from Washington to Montana. As working with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of State is in charge of all elections, but doesn't enter voter data into the database, and also doesn't do the hands-on work of administering elections. What we deemed is that this work required additional research. We could not transfer an all-mail ballot state to work in a state that has both polling places as well as mail ballot. So we needed to update that information to match directly. With this process, the state library is the keeper of GIS information and 911 information. We have a very robust GIS department. So a GIS department's our mapping department, and they've been working closely with the state library over the course of the last, at this point in time, 4 years, to take a look at our addresses, make sure those geographical points are included in the map, and specifically on tribal lands is where we get hit hardest with non-standard addresses. They have been going through every single address point and adding them in so that they can be both a 911 appropriate address and match the database. Any continuing forward will be a non-standard. We have voters who are registered the corner of Orange and 3rd. That non-standard address will transfer over, and so it will accurately reflect. And as we go forward, we're hoping to eliminate any of those non-standard addresses for true geographic locations. I know Camio's done a lot of work on address library and registrations. There are requirements that if you have a non-standard address under the Orange Street Bridge, we get you registered at that geographic location. So there's an interesting mix of this. And then we have received guidance, even last week. Nathan and Mike are working on any items that don't align. This is what it says it should be. You have one house that says it should be in House District 98 and is not. So we're looking line by line, item by item through the current database to correct it for the transfer. Noting that there will still be errors we update.
Thank you so much, Bradley. That's really helpful detail just to sort of think through the process. And I know it's definitely in the weeds, but it's appreciated.
No problem. And my apologies, guys. So many different groups, so many different committees. Sometimes I just join in like, you all remember where we're at on this, and the background's critically important. And then so as that ties in, the final decision maker is the elections administrator for any precinct boundary updates. As we go through this process, it's not as much of a concern about precinct boundary updates as it is about looking for voter services with associated polling places. And that's where we really want to gain in a lot of public comment on the polling locations associated with the precincts. I want to come up with some good precincts, present that information because they have to be balanced by population. The question is then, which polling location does that precinct vote at? And I see Cameo her hand here too, so I'll give myself a little breathing room and make sure we can get questions.
So I think this is something that we can talk about in the projects part, but we're going to have a lot of trouble with the database and attaching apartments and apartment numbers. And there's a lot of those and a lot of new ones. So that's something to worth thinking about because that's one of the big problems I ran into. And I still think there's probably 5 or 10% of the addresses that aren't in the 911 database. So.
Yeah, and it's hard to balance each of them. We will have the opportunity to add a new address point. That's the biggest thing we see in Missoula County. Construction's happening so fast that these are not added to the 911 database. They're not in our GIS. They're not in our property info. And by golly, there's somebody living there. And so we'll have that ability when it comes to address ranges for apartments. I don't know what information the state library and GIS has. As I think of 555 California Street, just down the block, it was not included in our county address library. It was brought up by a member of the public, similar to what you would do, Cameo. Hey, where's this address? and we got it added, but what is the appropriate range of apartment numbers? I know that there's the ability to add that field, but I think that it would take a little bit of work for us to go through every apartment building in the county and figure out, is it A, B, C, D, E, or is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And is that linked correctly? Right now, we don't utilize the apartment number field. And I think that adds a little bit to some of these confusions. There is no apartment 1000. It should be 100, and it's obviously a typo.
So to clarify that, we utilize the apartment number field when entering a voter registration, but we don't utilize the address, or sorry, the apartment number field when we are building the framework of the address library.
I was thinking a silly question. Somebody comes in, I just built a house at 1200 Bob Lane. It's not in any database that anybody can find, but we're gonna take them at their word. Is somebody going out and verifying that 1200 Bob Lane actually exists?
So if it's something we can't locate, we take it as the geographical location. So Cameo's been really great and has given us a list. Hey, you have this address. It does not exist. You're mailing a ballot to 100 Bob Lane and we can't find it. If they provide that geographic location under federal law, we must register them at that geographic location. If the communication comes back undeliverable, they're moved to inactive and then canceled.
Okay.
But there's this weave of state and federal laws, and we're threading the needle on all of them. So we do have to register you at 100 Bob Lane. If you swear that's where you live and this is the address, we have to say, point to it on the map so I get it in the right area. And then if we get undeliverable communications or it doesn't match your USPS, we start that inactivation process. And that's something I was referring to when I talked about everything we have to do next January. We will confirm our address versus the USPS address, and anybody with a discrepancy receives mailings. And if they don't reply to those mailings, they become inactive.
Okay.
So if
And
they
this
haven't,
is somebody that lives on the corner of Orange and Third.
Yeah, if it doesn't, well, so a non-standard is exempted from that because it's
Okay.
not in the database and it doesn't align. But if they are not regularly voting or have that undeliverable communication, they roll to that area.
Okay.
But
Bradley,
there's-
sorry, I just wanted to make a clarifying comment as well, which is that if 100 Bob Lane, they still to register would have to have some evidence, right, from another entity, if it's a power bill, a bank statement, their driver's license, right, that was going to confirm that address.
No,
No.
we receive this a lot. In Montana, you are not required to produce proof of your address. We have started registering voters for the upcoming election, and most voters come in with a utility bill or a bank statement or something with that address. I'm not certain where that information is coming from, but the Secretary of State and Montana Code don't require a proof of address or a physical ID to be presented when registering to vote. So you need to provide that residential address. If we can't locate it, we may, depending on the point in time, if they're in person, we'll resolve it then. If we truly can't locate it, we'll call them, we'll email them, we'll try and help resolve that. But then if we can't receive any more communication, we will register them based off of the information provided on the form and check to see if that comes back as undeliverable. PO boxes make that very hard. Sealy Lake is our biggest area where we have confusion about that because the voters are registered and they moved from Condon to Sealy Lake and they kept the same PO box. So the USPS address matches what's on file with our office, but they've actually moved to a different house district. And if we're able to locate that information, we work with those voters and say, hey, I see you moved from Condon to Sealy Lake according to this form. We'd like to get you updated to match that residence address too. When Sealy Lake used to have sewer district elections every year, we saw it the most at that point in time.
Thanks, Brad.
Tough. Yeah, it's tough. And as Cameo knows, we've been working on this and continue to work on it and will continue to work on it as long as we can, because we want that information to be as correct as possible. Did that get your question? I'm now pinging around a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Cameo, did you still have a question?
I was gonna mention that if they say they live at Third and Orange, but then provide a PO box, they're gonna get the mail.
Yep.
So that actual location where they're living, you know, doesn't seem like that's a very good validation if their mailing address is a PO box. So
Yeah. And that's one of those areas where we have to thread that needle with state law and federal law, and that's one's clearly in the state list maintenance. We had in the past done that based off of voting in the election. But there would be a voter who mailed a ballot in and it was too late for the election and they swore they voted, and we'd have to try and locate that ballot. What this did is it helped us catch voters that may have voted in the previous election but since moved. That's what we see more commonly in Missoula County, is that the voter is active, voted in the last election, but has moved. And with only those 3 different requirements on how we can do it from the state law, we feel like that catches the most voters. But the same as with somebody who may be experiencing homelessness or Sealy Lake, if their mailing address is correct, they're going to get that, they're going to receive that information, and they're going to continue to remain registered. With that, we hit hard my voter page. Every time I talk to anybody, we're discussing my voter page, and to check that information and confirm it's correct and update it if there is a change. Because we just see this a lot where voters are receiving information, receiving communication, but they may notice, yes, I have a PO box that matches. Boy, I haven't lived at East Street for a year. We better get that updated. I like it. There's a lot of information in there. Do I have any more questions about National Voter Registration Day, the database update, or the precinct update? Okay, perfect. The last one that I had, sorry, Denver, I'm stealing your thunder just reading these off because I've got them right in front of me, was concerns about violence at the polling place or for election officials or staff. We're continuing forward. We've heard about this. We've been preparing in a similar fashion since I started and took the realm in 2020. Every election we go through and we make sure to coordinate between every local law enforcement jurisdiction. So for us, that's 4 different jurisdictions that we work with. We work with CSKT, we work with the university, we work with the city police, as well as with the sheriff's office. Because of the satellite office location located at Grey Wolf Peak, we are also reaching out to CSKT. They are sovereign, so they have a different approach and they have a different response. We cannot send our own people out there, so we want to make sure that they're aware. We discuss every location where an election is being held. We staff additional security, normally at our elections location, our elections office here, as well as for this year, we have been asked by School District 1 to provide security in some of the schools. So we'll be adding additional security there. And then we make sure that they're aware of the locations, the managers, the laws surrounding elections so that they can have additional patrols in that area. Should anything come up, they're able to respond correctly, they're able to respond quickly, and they're able to help address any situations that come through. This is what we refer to as our pack an umbrella and hope it doesn't rain approach. So we've been doing that since 2020. We always make sure that we're prepared and that law enforcement knows the laws that surround elections. Specifically, you can't intimidate a voter, you can't impede the process, and you can't support an issue or a candidate that's on the ballot within 100 feet of a polling place. What does that mean? Well, every person's idea of whether or not they feel impeded or intimidated is different. So we ask for law enforcement to take a statement. That has worked out really well for us. We want to be prepared, but we don't want to add fuel to any flames of people who may be concerned about this, especially when we're doing all of this contingency planning in the background. Questions about that?
Have you seen an uptick in threats, or have there been issues?
Directly after the 2020 election in the spring of 2021, we received some fan mail that was less than pleasing. We don't really receive the threats.
Okay.
With some confusing information about election equipment used in other states, we've received comments that you should be cautious about using this. We don't use this equipment. thank you for reaching out to us. And also, general items like you should be prepared to hand count ballots because that's the only secure way. And we informed them that the Secretary of State guides those laws and they should bring that up legislatively or with the state, but not specific threats in Missoula County.
Okay.
Noting that nationwide, that has been a big issue. In Missoula County, for workers and or for election judges and or staff, we see some people with heightened emotions, but definitely not threats, not true concern. And also noting that ever since I've started, I think since we had late registration at the fairgrounds, 2010 or 2012, we've staffed a sheriff's deputy there at that location. So none of this is new to us, with the exception of working with some of the schools to add additional security at those that requested it. Noting that polling places need open access from the public and schools need safe and secure schools, we felt this was a great compromise to continuing to keep our polling places in public buildings, but also taking into mind new security concerns from the primary election. Good questions. Other questions, guys? I got to hand this over to somebody else because you know me, I'll talk elections all day long. I think I saw you, Claire.
Yeah, I was just in relation to that. I'm gonna mute my phone. There has been like a heightened presence of alt-right religious preachers on the university's campus. It's been a concern for the event services office and students all across the university. Do you see that being a problem with the satellite office at the university? And if so, what are the precautions or measures taken there? Or has the university even expressed any concern about that?
So we've been working closely with, oh my gosh, Office of Voter and Civic Engagement. Am I saying it right, Christina? Great. As well as with the communications from the law offices. And then we have a meeting next week ahead of that, where I'll be meeting with Brad Griffin, who is police, and I can bring that up. Normally, it is an aspect where you have free speech. We cannot hold electioneering laws when it is not election day. So we will have staff in there working and managing lines to help make sure that everybody receives a welcoming environment, but we can't limit political speech, limit First Amendment rights outside of the confines of the law. It has been a constant question because today people are voting in our office at the election center, but technically we cannot enforce electioneering laws except for on election day at polling places. We've established a clear area for people to support candidates and campaigns at this office, but it's always one of these moving targets. So we work closely at it. We prepare, we make sure that law enforcement and managers are aware of those restrictions. I'll chat with Mr. Griffin about it when we meet next week. But I think that since it's inside that building and since we have multiple line management, both from the elections office and groups that work in parallel to direct people there, we should be pretty good.
Thank you.
Clarify one on that.
Mhm.
So you're saying that there is a presence now. You're not saying that the university has expressed concern about it to this point.
Nope. And
Okay.
I'll chat with Brad or Mr.
I got you.
Officer Griffin, I should use the correct terms, about that next week,
Okay.
just to see if there's anything extra we should do or what recommendations they may have. Noting that we're already working with them, that we will have these events on this area and these are the laws to be aware of. And that this one is, we also, instead of just a polling place, we have this event at your area. And this is the other things to be concerned of. Specifically, one of the big issues is open carry, First and Second Amendment rights, and where those limitations end on election day around a polling place and how we protect those, because those are constitutionally protected rights. When they're outside of those confines of the 100-foot space on election day or that intimidation or impediment. And with the open carry, concealed carry laws going through so many changes, Officer Griffin is our best bet for what the current climate is on campus. Can you carry, can you not? And making sure that we have everybody notified as well.
Bradley, just so you, I'm sure you've been following the election law changes, but you know that the decision around, I can't even remember the bill for weapons on campus is now, I don't know if it was reversed or if it's enjoined. Clara, do you remember, is it enjoined right now?
I thought it was reversed.
Reversed. So I believe that the rule of the land right now on campus is that there is no weapons, I believe.
Exactly. And that's, I think we're all there. I always get that final confirmation from Officer Griffin, noting that also our other polling locations are located in government buildings or in schools, with the exception of one location, which is in a private business, and each of those locations prohibit firearms. So that really helps law enforcement. Is somebody feeling intimidated by a firearm, or is that firearm strictly prohibited from being on this campus? With the current climate and schools access, nobody should be bringing a firearm to a school, regardless of whether it's election day or not. And we want to help make sure that everybody's aware of that.
So while Bradley's taking a breath, I'm just going to add that I went to the University of Montana 40 years ago, and it was the same with people on campus protesting. It might have been a different crowd. So nothing's really changed there. Maybe just the tone or the people doing it.
That's what I've got. So that was a
Okay.
quick update. Other questions, if you guys have them, fire them off to me, but I don't want to monopolize all of the time, noting that you guys have some good discussion coming forward.
Are there any other final questions for Bradley before we move on to new business? Great. Thanks for the engaged conversation and discussion of the update. And thank you, Bradley, for all the detailed information. It's very helpful for us. So moving on to new business, the first item is to discuss the possibility of doing some educational outreach to high school seniors. Things like classroom visits, providing brief summary of how Missoula County elections work and how they might differ from other counties and states, as well as handing out voter registration information. Bradley, was this a new business item that came from a member of the EAC?
It was. Susan, I was just going to say, you want to
Okay.
briefly
Susan, it's
chat
all
about-
you.
Well, I'm not entirely sure what the right procedure is, but so I had asked Bradley about it in an email. But my daughter's a senior in high school, and so I know lots of other parents who have seniors in high school, and in Montana, seniors are required to take a U.S. government and economy class, and some parents who had grown up here, just in discussion, had mentioned that when they were in high school, there was such a thing where in their, in the class that they had at the time, when there was a lot of kids who were turning 18 that year, someone came to their classrooms and talked about voting and handed out voter registration information. And some parents, those parents were surprised that that doesn't still happen. And especially with just, so much discussion in national current events. It just kind of seemed like something, maybe even preventative for misinformation being there in the future, but just to, explain to up and coming voters how it all works and give them an opportunity to participate.
I loved this idea. I saw this as a great way EAC could join in. That presentation that is linked on the webpage covers a majority of what is required. And so we have a recorded presentation of the requirements for voter registration that could be pre-broadcast. We can help assist with getting people in touch with schools. What we run into is that at this point in time, I feel like it's the best point in time was about a month ago.
Well, maybe for the spring elections.
But I'm like, we can work and build this in. We can help provide contacts. We can help provide information about Montana's elections. And what this might be is a great way to work directly with the EAC members, list out the different schools we'd like to go to and help do some outreach directly to them, get connection with those teachers. And we can help assist with getting those connections made, getting that material here. And what a great way for the EAC to put some of the knowledge that we can help gain or help disseminate out into the community. Noting that in the spring, our office can come and assist a lot more than a month ago or this month. I love this. We talked about this in the past, and I think it's helpful. And so we can always help support in any way that's needed. And now I'll be quiet again and let the discussion go back to you all.
I didn't see whose hands went up first. So why don't we go Denver and then Clara?
Thanks, Christina. Susan, I think this is a fantastic idea and definitely within the boundaries of our mission statement. I'm wondering if there's been any outreach to the schools so far, and specifically any outreach to the teachers union, the MFPE.
I haven't done any. I just offered up this idea to Bradley the other day. So I haven't done anything yet, but I am happy to.
Great. Well, on that note, thank you for bringing the idea forward. And when the time is appropriate and we have all of our materials together and ready to move forward, I'd be more than happy to talk with the representatives at the teachers union.
Great.
I'm just out of high school. I guess not just anymore, like 4 years. But when I was in high school, Montana Women Vote came near the end towards the last day of school to provide little goodie bags with a voter registration sheet, like a how to vote card and a pencil and a pen and some candy. And so even if it was just something like that, and I think if we hit the end of the school year, we're going to get so many more people that will be eligible, will be 18 than if we did this semester. So I think that's something that we should look into, even if it's just like, if it's not us going into the classrooms, it's sending them the video and with like 30 gift bags with a voter registration card in them, I think would be really effective.
I'm raised my hand so I could hop in. It's really exciting to see this energy. One thing it made me think of is a nice combination of a way that we can be effective as the EAC, right? Meeting our mission of voter education and outreach, but also to sort of think about some of the bigger issues that Denver has brought up, like what's happening with disinformation and violence. It's also a way for us to maybe highlight like the trusted info, the idea that the trusted source of this information is Bradley and the team at the elections department. And I think that's kind of a neat way, hearing Clara say, you know, there was pens or pencils. I was at an election conference in July and I made Bradley jealous. I got a little notepad that looked like a ballot from one of the election vendors, right? And so stuff like that, right? It works for me. It's got to work for kids too. So I love this idea. It's super fun.
I just have a quick question. Why would we approach the teachers union instead of just the school district administrators?
So I'm not certain on this. I have great connection with the administrative staff for School District 1. I was going through this all, and I think it's very important, and I would gladly help guide this. I would want to have a direct discussion with the administrators and the staff there to see kind of what they would like. My partner works at Hellgate. I've had this discussion, very, very broad strokes overview. And is it best for us to have this discussion with administration, principals, or government teachers from bottom up or top down? And I think that we can, as a team, look into where. I would like to hit it from every aspect that we can, but I'd like to hit it similarly to what we do when we're scheduling polling places, both bottom up and top down in the way that makes the most sense. Noting that if a government teacher is not interested in this, I don't necessarily want to force them to do this by adding a program through from the school district, a union, or some other area. And then I'm also very cautious. What Christina mentioned, when we talk about trusted source, The elections office, Clara said, hey, they had a group that works in parallel come. I know that group. They support issues and candidates on the ballot. The more that we can make this from the elections office, not from a group that supports issues or candidates on the ballot, I think the more that that speaks directly to new voters, that if you're looking for this information, note that there are groups that are here simply to provide election information. And then there are groups that provide election information and also lobby for their interests. And that's where we can really separate. And by utilizing the EAC, information from our office show that this is your trusted source. So yes, we would want to approach that really carefully. And then I think that if we can state we've piloted this program and have the union send out, look at the cool things we're doing in Missoula, fine. We do that a lot. The information we're doing on campus, here's everything we're providing. And if you're a group that works in parallel and want to share this information, please do. But guiding that information from our office. So I think it's great to look at, and it's on my radar too.
Marilyn, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was one of those government teachers at Hellgate. Signing up for registration. I kept registration slips in my room, and once a month I would remind people and take them then to the courthouse. To the district, they have some kind of a newsletter. And so, you know, it would be publicized that way. There's a number you could call. It would make it a lot easier if the teacher had access to calling us. We can get the teachers, as Denver mentioned, from the union. I'm sure we could get a list of it also would, and it's fine to mention it to the union. They would, you know, they like to know what's going on, but individual teachers do it, and having enough.
Marilyn,
We'd really like you to vote. Yes.
you're breaking up randomly on there.
Oh, okay,
But-
sorry. I don't know why.
No,
Anyway,
that's
it's a
okay.
good idea. And I would go through the district to get the information out. Wants to do it. I'd be glad to help with this and get it out. Sorry about that. I don't know what's wrong. I'm sitting next to my computer.
No,
Thanks,
it's
Marilyn.
sometimes and then cutting out others, but I think that this deserves a robust follow-up to the EAC before we take any action. And I think we can kind of get together a team that might be interested in helping assist with this. Nathan and I can pull together materials, noting that this process will not be effective for the November election. I'm looking at this from our side as a upcoming next year process because of the late registration requirements.
Bradley, thinking about that, and Marilyn, I'm sorry we missed some of your participation. It sounds like maybe a microphone issue. I don't know. It doesn't sound like whatever. But I think you've got really important things for us to learn from. And I'm wondering, Susan, since you brought this up, if it's something you sort of want to spearhead moving forward. It sounds like there's interest from the team. I don't want to volunteer you to do something, but just thought I'd throw it out there before thinking about next steps.
Oh, no, I'm happy to spearhead. I get, it sounds like Marilyn has some good ideas about how to do that. And I was kind of not sure myself if you go through the board or the superintendent or what, but, in the absence of any other input, if left to my own, I would probably scope out all options.
Great. So maybe what we can do, Bradley, in a follow-up from this meeting is sort of identify Susan as our fearless leader here and see if there's other interest from members of the EAC in supporting the work and getting a team together to move this forward. Kimio, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add that I think, I totally agree with Bradley. I think we need to be careful and follow the proper path to get it into the school system and make the elections office be the lead.
Great, thank you. Any other items related to this new business point before we move on to our second item of new business? Well, thanks, Susan, for bringing this up and for everybody's excitement. I think that it's a great project for us to take on, being able to ensure young folks in Missoula County understand the elections process and how the things work from the county perspective. With that, I'm going to turn it to Denver for the second item of new business, the discussion of project ideas for the EAC.
Thanks, Christina. So as I said, in Bradley's rather substantive update, he left us with, I think, 5 different ideas of projects that the elections office is going to be working on and that we could put our energies into. Now, I recognize that everyone has a limited amount of time and a limited amount of attention that they can spend on these kind of things. But I think that it's important to have kind of a broad discussion and see if we can come to some consensus about what are the most important ideas that we can focus our time on, so that we can prioritize our work. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily rank them or that we even, come up with a formal declaration of what we will focus on today. But I think it's helpful to start that conversation. And Bradley, if you would, for the benefit of the folks on this call, would you mind reviewing the options that you laid out in your update?
Yeah, no problem. Just kind of pulling it back up. So I thought one of the biggest areas that we could utilize assistance with this would be looking at those updated precincts and polling locations. This is a big change. This is a change made to be responsive to voters. The last time precincts were updated was 2013, and the way voters vote in Missoula County has changed. Also noting that the access to your polling location or ballot is what allows you your ability to participate in the election. So when we're looking at this option, we're going to be tasked with 2 different things. The hard task of balancing precincts is equally by population. That we'll have assistance with the voter database, but then specifically assigning those precincts to polling locations. Reviewing the polling locations, looking at those polling locations, determining whether or not those needs at the polling location still fit the needs for the elections office. One thing we noticed is that in 2013, schools provided the elections office very open access. We will prop the doors open to the gym from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. and allow people to come and go as they please. And now we have requirements to have secure access to the building, know the people whom are entering around student locations, and at some locations requests from the schools to add additional security staffing. Is that polling location a good area? Does the ADA access still work the same way it did previously with open doors? And as we look at those locations, we want to figure out where we'll be. Do we have enough locations that we can provide a level of service that is what we expect to give and people expect to receive? And how do we balance that with utilization and costs? Noting that in the primary election, we had an 8% voter turnout at our polling locations. Now, I think that there is the ability to consolidate polling locations and provide service still at that exemplary level. But as we do that, we need to note that what do our voters want? And that's that survey portion that we put together. Just chatted with Christina about that. That is almost fully live. By the time ballots mail on Friday, we will have that out. And specifically, the most important information for me is how far would you be willing to travel to a polling location? And what is an appropriate wait time? As a public servant, it's important we ask the public what service they want. And so this is that step. Well, I know that most everybody on the EAC really wanted a survey that could have scientific results, a sample size and accurate data. What we're able to do is reach out and ask voters what they want and be responsive to that. Now, with that coming forward by the January meeting, I'll have a great calendar established. So I'll note that this is when we want our final decisions to be made. This is when we want to be presenting our our plan for final changes that may be recommended. This is when we want to present a preliminary plan potentially to the EAC, asking the EAC for advice on elections, specifically what your role is. Noting that the more information we can get together, the better we can make that plan, but noting that we do have a framework. We're required to look at precincts and we want to balance it to utilization. Voters received the best dang service I've ever seen because we'd walk into Lolo School and there were 11 judges waiting for the next voter to arrive. Now we got to balance that. We got to keep that appropriate. We have to make sure that any potential consolidations don't eliminate services for voters. So that to me is the biggest aspect. Also noting that our office has a lot of other things that we'll be doing that is just important to note. We do list maintenance. We're switching this database. We're preparing, but many of these can't receive outside assistance because they require that work within the database. They require our staff to go in and pull these reports and send them. So a lot of this is information, but I think that one of the biggest opportunities we have to get advice is looking at polling locations. Noting that we do have the full year to establish what polling locations those precincts will go to. But we want to help make sure that this information is out, accessible, and we're receiving as much input we can from the public when we make these important decisions. So updating precincts is the biggest area that I have. And also noting that we'll be going through and I'll be providing mostly information out about bills that we are looking at as we go through and track bills through the legislature. We did this a lot. Kathy, you know so well. Same day voter registration. We were updating both the EAC and working with legislatures to say, this is what's important to Missoula County. And this is why this is important to Missoula County, noting that maybe not everybody agrees with that interpretation, but it's our job to look at that legislation and look at the impact for staff and voters. And we may be reaching out to you all to either inform you or receive additional input from you about these bills. And then I think the number one thing, boy, we're gearing up for this election, and it's sharing accurate information. I am actively preparing to provide records requested by multiple different records requesters and combat malicious information from the election. We're gearing up now, and that is important because some of this is very well produced. Some of this is really great, and it's designed to cast doubt on people who are thinking about this analytically. It's also designed to help share information that is just blatantly incorrect. We want to make sure that we're providing out accurate information about our elections. I just had this discussion today. I can't tell you about what's happening in another jurisdiction, but I can tell you that there is a person like me responsible for elections in that jurisdiction. And I recommend you reach out to them there if you'd like to know.
So Bradley, real quick, you're talking about anticipating what kind of records requests you're going to get and not past ones, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So part of this is we just came from where we have ongoing litigation about records retention. And, you know, if you request records within the retention period and we have produced those records, we will provide them out. But also we're looking forward to make sure that we are tracking that information and have it available so it's not a burden on the county or the requester. And also noting that we want to help combat any misinformation. What tends to happen is somebody requests this information, doesn't understand how to read it, and then provides out inaccurate information based off of their interpretation of true information from the election. So a lot of it is just simply preparing the state ahead that, as we did at the public tour, a voter may receive 2 ballots. We are preparing ballots right now to go out in the mail. We have to void the ballot that is already out in the mail and then send you a new ballot because of the time frames. Receiving 2 ballots does not equate to fraud. Reach out to our office and we can let you know about the specific process that may have hit you. The way we prepare ballots so far ahead of time, it is very likely that we are working on preparing a ballot for a voter who submitted a voter registration application that is valid today. So they do have 2 ballots, but one is voided and cannot be accepted. And that's how the system protects the integrity of the election. So it's just sharing that information, taking a look at a lot of the information that we've seen over the past few years, looping that in and being prepared. So learning from what has happened over the last 2 years and being prepared for that. So I don't have a ton of items that come forward, but I do know that the more we can echo good information from reliable sources, the better that is for voters to be able to help sift through the mountains of information, some accurate directly from the source and some which may be intended to misconstrue the information or dupe a voter.
Would I
Bradley,
be, oh, sorry, Denver.
No, go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say, would I be correct in sort of attempting to summarize part of this conversation and saying that a big issue that Bradley is seeing a need for support from the EAC on is concerning redistricting that's coming up in the spring. And we also had the introduction of an idea from Susan, which is the educational outreach to high schools. I don't know if I'm misconstruing that. I just wanted to try and sort of put my arms around this conversation and where we're headed in terms of potential project ideas for the EAC.
Yep, I think that's it exactly. And then the ongoing, never-ending process of helping share accurate information. Noting that we rely on you all for that all of the time. And we'll help prepare that, get that out, and we just need you to help make sure that it gets to the people you know who might need it.
Bradley, thank you for clarifying that. I wanted to ask if that effort to provide accurate information and to rebut misinformation, if that also includes active outreach to community groups and recruitment that we have talked about in the past, but have not really made much progress in the past.
So it is hard to share information with groups that may or may not have requested it. In the past, we put together a great list of different organizations and needed the assistance from the EAC to reach out to these organizations to say, are you interested in sharing this? This is the information we have. Similar to the idea of saying, hey, here is this information. From the elections office, it can be really hard to blanket every nonprofit group with a blast email if they haven't asked for that. So a lot of the times when we're asking for assistance with sharing with third-party groups, we're relying on the EAC, that list that we put together. I can have Nathan see if we can pull that up, revitalize that for next year. But it is, have we had connection with these groups recently? Are they interested in this information? I don't just want to blast the Rotary Club out of the blue with an update that they haven't asked for. And so some of this is continuing to build those relationships and keep them going. And this is a great area where we can utilize EAC to state, hey, I know this person. I know that I've been out to many groups with invites through EAC members to state, can you present to this Kiwanis Club, this Rotary Club, this group? And that introduction is so helpful rather than just blanket, hey, have you thought about elections in a little bit? So with that, I think that there's a great opportunity to work forward and revitalize those connections, ensure that those groups want to receive it, and set up that mailing list so that we can help share it easily from our side. I don't think we've hit that very hard this year, and that is something we can definitely dig into. We have a very robust list from election judge recruitment. It's just kind of taking that out, brushing that off and saying, should this become something more than just updates for election judge recruitment? And what would you like it to be? Maybe we could come up with a few lists for different areas that groups are interested in receiving. These are upcoming dates and deadlines. This is accurate information about the election, or this is opportunities to serve. The more we can help coordinate and get that together, the more useful that information will be, rather than just a BCC 100 different organizations with a weekly update. Also noting that I'm not positive we can do that without an opt-in.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. For the record and the discussion, I think this is one area that really complements our efforts to recruit people for election judges and election assistants, and goes a long ways towards, or has the potential to go a long ways toward combating misinformation. It does take active work and outreach, and it's something that we have talked about before as a committee, and just frankly have not done a great job in follow through. But I do think that there's a lot of potential here, and I think that we should consider giving it a second try.
And we've got a lot of resources to help assist with this. Look at that list of projects we have coming forward. What we run into is that our staff puts everything on the line for the upcoming election. Then we pivot around and we start working on the next projects coming forward. And we really need assistance from people that have those connections to be able to reach out and make that introduction. We're producing the information. We just want it to be shared more widely.
Denver, and you're thinking about adding this item to the agenda, is it the objective to sort of have some coalescence here or just to have a discussion? I want to make sure I'm trying to keep time, making sure we're getting through everything that we need to today.
Sure, I appreciate that. My hope was that we could have a broad discussion and get feedback from folks about what they feel is the priority. It seems like there's three kind of basic paths forward, right? We've got updating the precinct locations, providing accurate information and combating misinformation, and the education outreach. To me, that seems like with a team as broad as we have, we should be able to divide up into some smaller working groups and be able to take on all three of those projects. But I also recognize that people have limited amounts of time, and that limit looks different from person to person. So I think one of the critical questions is, do we have enough both interest in all three of these areas, and do we have enough people that are willing to take on the responsibility to actually make it work? I would suggest that we do. Other thoughts?
Not the one. You guys are back. We had a little blip on our side. Denver, I heard the end of your sentence. Did somebody reply to that we missed?
No, Bradley, right now we have the floor open to hear support essentially, or counters, I guess, to the suggestion that we think about sort of these three core areas and break, ourselves into working groups. Is there, maybe there's a question here that is there interest in these areas? Is there interest in applying ourselves? And maybe once we come to, if we come to a position where we say, yes, there is, Denver, you and I, and maybe Bradley can get together before our January meeting and sort of flesh out what the details would be. And so we could come and bring that as new business at our next meeting and make some concrete decisions.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Kathy, I'm sorry to pick on you, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. You've been rather quiet, and I'd be interested in what your thoughts are as far as what our priorities should be going forward.
Well, I think that what you guys have got going is great priorities. I am an alternate, so I've been trying to do more listening than speaking up probably. I very much would like to see us move forward with the education of potential new voters, and depending on how my time sifts out after the election, I would be interested in that particular area myself. But I would be willing to work in other areas as well. So I think that the committee as a whole is going in a very positive direction. So I don't know if that's what you were looking at, but that's my 2 cents.
That was exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you, Kathy. Susan, Clara, I see you both in camera. What are your thoughts?
I also feel similar that I feel happy with this plans going forward. I'm really excited about getting engaged with students, especially in the high schools. Unfortunately, I graduate in the spring, so I think that concludes my appointment on this board. So I won't be here for a lot, but I want to be here and contribute as much as I can. So that is what I will do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I like those three areas of projects to head into after we get over the hump of the current elections. But and yeah, I mean, if we need a person to spearhead the high school project, I'm happy to do that and help with the others if that's what's available or needed.
Great,
Denver,
thank you.
it sounds like we have a mandate to move forward, at least in the first next steps, which maybe I had suggested that we could send out a note about the education piece, but maybe what we do is broaden it and just say, here are the three areas that we talked about. What would you be interested in serving on? And then we can sort of move forward from there. Does that sound like, I'm seeing some nods, like positive feedback for that suggestion? So Denver, thank you. You've gotten us moving in a direction to reassert some issue area groups. I don't mean to cut you off. Are there any other items you want to contribute before we sort of round out that part of our conversation?
No, I think this is great. I would just ask one more time if there are any concerns about not having enough energy or focus or interest in any of these projects.
So I think they're great. I would just caution on the addressing misinformation, because that's kind of a whack-a-mole. And I almost feel like we might be better off if we keep track of what we hear as misinformation and then get together and discuss what to do about it, because we could spend a lot of time putting out information that people don't really care, or they see it and they write it off or whatever. And it might be better to not encourage them, but also maybe just react as needed. And I'm not suggesting ignoring it by any means. I just think it's going to be hard to anticipate exactly. And we would be better off to figure out what the information is that's bad and correct it at the time it comes up, which might be 2 weeks after the election, or it might be 10 months or continually, who knows.
Thanks for that input, Cameo.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that, Cameo. It's very interesting. Internally, we have a discussion whenever information is coming up. Should we respond? How should we respond? And what should we respond? From there, if we respond, we like it when others, if they're comfortable, share that information out. It may not be the best method for the EAC to respond to misinformation. There are times when our elections office does not respond to misinformation, and instead, partisan political elected officials respond to misinformation. And that is absolutely where we'd want to separate out EAC and our guidance and work on that. Now, we can always work to share that information. If it's something we want to help make sure that we share, we'll let you know. If it's something you guys do not as a committee want to share, there is no need to share that information. And then personally, you all have the opportunity to either share or not share that, noting that we want to continue forward with that same response that Rebecca brought up before of, if you're sharing something personally and the committee didn't agree, noting that. But yeah, I appreciate that. Misinformation is touchy.
I think I jumped the gun a little bit because on my notes, I put information sharing because I was thinking the county has a responsibility, right, in terms of the communications team that is going to be sending out information. And I certainly don't want to get our wires crossed in terms of conflicting information from us as the EAC as opposed to them. So maybe I miswrote my notes, but I have education, information sharing, and then sort of this time-sensitive project of redistricting information and participation. In the note that we send out, sort of inviting your interest, please tell me if I've gotten it wrong or if there's something that you think is important to change or include there. So by no means is this set in stone, just sort of the way that I'm synthesizing our conversation. Okay. With that, I think we've concluded new business. This has been a very active meeting, good conversation and good energy thinking about parts moving forward. Our next item on our agenda is comments from committee members. And before I open it up, I just want to make a quick call to my fellow members to, if you have not sent a photo and a brief blurb about yourself to Bradley and Nathan, to please do so you can be showcased on the county website. And so folks in the community know who is representing them on the committee. And so those of us that maybe don't have close relationships with one another at this moment in time can get to know a little bit more about each other as well. So if you haven't already, my challenge to you before the election, knowing it probably won't get posted until after, is to send Bradley a photo and a brief bio of yourself if you haven't already. So I used my privilege there to put a comment from a committee member. With that, I'll open it up to other comments from committee members at this time. Kathy, I see your hand up. Oh, I think you're muted still.
Just wondering if we could have Brad remind us which ones he hasn't heard from, maybe, because I don't remember whether I sent one in or not.
Yeah, I'll pull it up right now for you guys. I finally got them all up there.
I can send everyone a reminder.
Yep, we can let you all know individually too. It looks like Rebecca, Cameo, Todd, Kathy, Marilyn, and I've got you twice. Oh, Kathy Nygaard and Kathy Whitman.
Okay.
So as I was like, I don't know how I got you twice, but both Kathys, yes.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other comments from members of the committee?
Just want to say, sorry, I missed the last meeting. It's great to see some new faces and looking forward to working with you all next year.
Thanks, Denver. Marilyn, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to thank the elections office for your diligence, your hard work, your constant striving.
We lost you partway through again, Marilyn, but from your face and from your energy, I could tell it was all positive feedback to the elections office.
Thank you, elections office, for your diligence, for your answering questions. I appreciate you, and Missoula should be proud of you.
We got it. Perfect.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more with Marilyn's sentiment. Any final comments from committee members? All right. With that, our next meeting will be January 10th at 3 p.m. If we are not fully in person, we will always have the opportunity to join via Teams. So just put that in your calendar and know either at the elections office or via Teams. And with that, that concludes the items that we have on our agenda. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. I don't think I need to ask all in favor. All in favor, you can sign off.
Aye.
Aye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Quick
Thank you.
question.